Kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling start to Shake It Up Saturday. Yay! So this is the day we get to try new things. We do things out of order. We change our routines. I know a lot of you have Saturday routines. I broke mine. My routine got broken. My alarm went off at 5 and woke me up. Mind you, I didn't get to bed till 4. Till 1. Got to bed. I finally turned the light out at 1 o'clock this morning. There we go. So I got 4 hours of sleep. And then I just sort of like laid there and I thought, turned the alarm off and I says, I'm going to nap for an hour. And I woke up an hour and 15 minutes later, and then I kind of lazed in bed for a bit. So, I had a shake-up start. I love doing shake-up starts on Saturday if I don't have anything at like 8, 9, 10 o'clock. I do have an appointment in like 25 minutes, but that's okay. We've already had a very full morning. Got the devotion times done. Haven't done my daily meditation. That's coming up next after my call. I do have some stuff I need to get finished up so I can enjoy the day off tomorrow, because tomorrow is I'm celebrating Brad's birthday tomorrow, even though it was Wednesday, and I've decided we're going to watch the Hobbit trilogy. So get up for that. Let's see, what have we done so far today? So we've done our normal morning routines, like I said, except the meditation. We're doing that a little later. And then we've got housework that needs to be done. And maybe I'll do some... Oh, there's a good project. That'll take me like maybe 20 minutes to do. Depends how much the shiny object syndrome comes in. It is going to be a hot day. I'm already sitting here sweltering. I have no idea what the temperature is. We have windows open and there's virtually no breeze. It's 75 outside, which means it's probably over 80 inside here right now. But I'm pausing at putting the AC on so I can at least talk to you guys without having to shout over the noise of the AC. And I got to contact the repair guy again because I sent him a text message and haven't heard back from him, so I can get the front AC fixed and stop that rattling that's going on. But on the good side, I got letter number. Remember I told you about these letters? These ones, the flower letters. These are awesome. And the last one was like May 20th, I think it was. This one is June 4th, 1944. So 2 days before the invasion at Normandy. 2 days before D-Day. And this is letter number 19. And look at this beautiful handwriting on there. This is from Audrey Rose to her mother-in-law. Oh, they got a hole in the piece of paper right here at the crease. And then there was a read last thingy, which, of course, I opened and read first. So there was that, and then there was, what's the other thing? And then there was I love these little postcards because you can send them to people. And it even says on there, I don't know if you can read that, snail mail too. I love that. Snail mail too. So you can actually write somebody a postcard and send it to them, if you wish. Actually, these are matte finish, not glossy finish. Interesting. So I've got letter number 19. It's 2 days before D-Day. So the next one will probably be either dated on D-Day or after D-Day, and we get to hear all of the what happened. So I suspect it'll be dated after D-Day, so after 6th of June. So I'm curious to see what happens. Can't wait. I love these letters. They're really cool, and it is a love story, but you're also learning a lot about history at the same time. So these two people met in 1943 at a 4th of July Army Rangers dance, and this guy, Charlie, basically filled up Audrey Rose's dance card for the entire evening. It was almost like love at first sight. And she's the daughter of the general. And she doesn't even call him father, dad, none of those words. He's just, no, she just calls him the general. Even when she writes a letter to him, it's dear the general. I thought that was kind of cute. And it's all talking about, and then there's these letters going backwards and forwards between the two of them on their courtship. Then you find out they got married, and And then there's letters going between the general and his friends, and letters between the two main characters, Audrey Rose and Charlie, going back forwards between them, their parents, that sort of thing as well. And oh, excuse me. So it's really, really well done. And they have in the letters, there's phrases that are highlighted in red, and you have to go to their website and a particular page on their website, and then you can type in these red phrases to learn more about what that terminology meant, because it's terminology that was used at the time. It may still be used today, I don't know, but it was definitely used around that time. So you can go learn about this terminology and what it meant. And they have two other series. So there's Audrey Rose, which takes place during World War II. I never even thought to look it up. Let's see. And the other two series, there's the Lilly Clara collection, and that one is about how she is, it says here, she's a spirited dressmaker, and she answers a matrimonial ad and heads west for an adventure that quickly turns out to be more than she bargained for. And it takes place in 1884. And a little town in the western United States has found itself the destination spot for cowboys, prospectors, and outlaws. And it's in Frisco, Utah, the home of the newly discovered Horn Silver Mine. So that's going to be kind of a really cool story about the Wild West. So I'm thinking I might do that one next. And their third one in the series, their third one is the Nora Aven collection. And what's this one about? This one's like about it's almost seems like it just says here, for 9 long months while biding her time at the Dunstan Academy, Nora Aven Lukens has believed she's going crazy. After all, seeing things that can't possibly be real isn't a good omen. And so it's almost like it's got a mythical surrounding, because her chronically absent myth-chasing guardian has died under mysterious circumstances. And so she turns to her neighbor, who she thought she could trust, for help, but soon learns her longtime friend is hiding more than he is telling. So that's going to be more of a mystery one. Oh, I kind of like that one. Yeah, so she sets out on her own myth-chasing adventure to unravel the mysteries surrounding her guardian's death. And it all takes place in Iceland, because they're talking about the ancient world of Icelandic myth. So that one's going to be a really good one to have a read of too, because I love myths and legends. Like Greek mythology, the Irish mythology, all the different cultures and their different mythologies. I kind of like their stories. And when I was in Hawaii back in 2000, we were on the Big Island, the main Hawaii, and we'd gone around to the volcanic national park, and we're at the head office there, and there was a trail you could walk around down to look into one of the volcanoes there, extinct. And I stayed at the visitor center. I had a knee that was giving me trouble, and there was no way I could do the hikes or anything like that. And so I'm sitting there, and I thought, let me have a look at their book collection to see what they have. And so I picked up the book on Hawaiian myths and legends, and I just start browsing through it, and I'm like, I know these stories. And I'm just like turning page after page. Some of the names are the same, some are different, but the stories were the same. Like they were the same as the Maori myths and legends. But then the Polynesian culture, Hawaii, oh jeepers, now I'm going to go mind blank here. All the Polynesian cultures that are scattered throughout the South Pacific all came from a place called Hawaii. And I read a story a few years ago saying that nobody knew where Hawaii was, and that they had traced the origins of Hawaii back to somewhere around Taiwan. And I'm like, I don't think so, but whatever the genealogy says or anything like that. So they all have these Polynesian cultures all have very similar stories, myths and legends. And, we talk about in New Zealand, if you look at the shape of the three islands, the North Island, the South Island, and Stewart Island, which is that little one at the bottom, the South Island is the canoe that Maui and his brothers were in, and they used his grandmother's, and the Stewart Island is the grandmother's jawbone, and this is how the islands come about. And the North Island is the fish that they snagged with the grandmother's jawbone in their canoe. And so there was that. But then when you go to the Hawaiian Islands, Maui, same character, uses his grandmother's jawbone, which is, what's the name of that island? Molokai? It's Molokai. It's a crescent moon-shaped one. That's the jawbone that they used to pull up the Hawaiian Islands. So I thought that was really cool. So I love myths and legends because we all came from somewhere. We all have our own beliefs and everything else. But it's just curious to see what some cultures, what their myths and legends are. So you've got the Greek fables. You've got the total mind blanking today. You've got all the ones that the Irish, but the Irish stories that they tell. You got the Scottish stories that they tell. Every culture has their own myths and legends, and they're really quite cool to go in and read and that sort of stuff, because some of them are kind of sort of based on, they take some form of creation and create their own to fit their mythology at the time and that sort of thing. So it's always curious to see what other countries' mythology is on the story of creation. So, or how the earth and the sky got separated, and basically Maui laid on his back because they all had to walk around crouched down, and because the sky and the earth were the mother and father to human life, and so Maui lays on his back and uses his legs to push apart his parents so that they could at least walk around standing up, and that's in the Hawaiian myths as well as the Maori legends. And then you've got the story of the sun would just like literally race across the sky, and just you'd have a few minutes of daylight or something like that, and Maui makes up this lasso and lassos the sun and forces it to slow down so that you could at least have the daylight that we have today. So it's interesting to see where where the different cultures have on their stories of creation and things. It's kind of fascinating, and that's part of genealogy, because because it's part of the culture that if it's part of the culture that you come from, that's part of your heritage, that you had ancestors that believed that these myths were true, for whatever reason. Some of them are kind of, I'm not sure exactly how to explain it, but you can have different myths and legends. So it's interesting because it's part of the cultures that you came from. So when you learn, like if you have Scottish ancestry in you, there's lots of myths and legends around the Scots, and they've got their stories that they tell that have been passed down through generation after generation after generation after generation. What are the stories that have been passed down through your family? Myths and legends are everywhere, depending on the culture. So what culture did you come from originally that has myths and legends? What are some of the myths and legends that they have? So it's always, and it kind of makes up, and then because there's family stories that are passed down through generations, like, oh, we come from someone, this famous European royal person over here, or we're descendants from this famous writer, or we're descendants from this line of noblemen or something like that. So there's always these myths and legends about that, family myths and legends. And so it's interesting to go back and see what portion of it is actually true and what portion of it, like somebody said, oh, well, there's rumors in our family that we're descended from this general. And I said, that can't be possible. And they're like, why? I said, because he never had any kids. She's like, oh, thank goodness for that. But we have found along the way, when we were looking at this general's last name, we found a whole line in her family that were completely had their own historical stories to tell, from who they associated with, what families they were married into, what events were taking place at the time, what they themselves are famous for, that you can go to this particular county in this state and you can pull books off the bookshelf and just read the actual stories of her, third and fourth great grandparents that founded these particular counties in these states. So it's kind of cool that you can say, oh, we got told. And yes, somewhere along the line, you may be related to that person that never had any kids, but we've still got to find that link. So it's kind of interesting. Somebody probably says, oh, we're related to them, and it could be this is how, or they could be a distant cousin or something. And somewhere along the story, in the telling of the story got changed to being a descendant of them. So it's like those, what were those games that used to call? Somebody would whisper in your ear a message, and then you had to turn around and tell the next person. And they had to tell the next person. And by the time you got around the circle, the story that was told at the end was completely different to the story that was told at the beginning. There might have been one or two facts in that story or that sentence. Usually it was one or two sentences that you passed around. And by the time it got to the last person or back to the first person, the sentences had completely changed. And so that was kind of interesting. So that's what happens with the family stories as well. And why when you go digging to find out, are they true, there's got to be some truth to them somewhere along the line because of something that happened in the past. So our job as a genealogist is to go back and uncover that and find out what the actual truth, and do the best we can to find the true story behind these rumors that are in the families, or I call them the family myths and legends, because they're the stories that always get pulled out at family gatherings. Oh, remember about our fourth great grandfather, and he did da 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 da, and then you find out he didn't actually do that, but he was involved in an incident that took place at that time, just not the one that they keep telling about. It's something completely different. Or we're related to blah, 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 blah. And then over the years, it's been changed to, oh, we're cousins of this person, we're descendants from this person. And then when you go back, you find out what the actual relationship is. And it could have been that famous person's family married into your, the two families were married together. And so a grandmother or a grandfather from the family that married into your direct line may have been a relative of this person, and that's how the relationship story became. So it's kind of fun going back and doing that. So anyway, I'm out of here. I'm going to be online in 8 minutes. Our question of the month is, what jobs have you had over the years? Let's see, what other jobs have I had over the years? I was in the Air Force for 6 years, Royal New Zealand Air Force for 6 years. I was a publication specialist, which meant I worked in the libraries. There was the technical library, the recreational library, the publications production library, the publications library, the media library. What other ones did I work in? Then I worked on the publication production side of it, so actually doing the desktop publishing for the manuals. So we took care of all of the manuals for the Air Force. And the manuals were produced in Wellington, and the office that I worked in, they had these offices down there that had officers and non-commissions that worked in there, and they were the ones that would send us down. We need to update this manual with this stuff. So we would type up the changes and everything that they wanted. We would then proofread it. It would go through 3 sets of eyes. The person that was working on the project, and then 2 others, one of them being a supervisor, and then it was sent back to the guys that originated it. They did their check on it, and then they came back with any changes that needed to be made, or they approved it, and we published it and sent it out to the bases so that they could update their manuals on base, so everything would be up to date. And that was our job as the publication specialist, of making sure all the manuals on base were always updated with the latest stuff. And that was a critical job, because if in publications production there was one number off on a setting in an electronic or an electrical manual, you could down a plane. We had, there was a big project in New Zealand where they were updating Skyhawks. And so there were changes coming through, and we were keeping up with the changes in the manuals. And then one of the Skyhawks had an accident and crashed. And the moment that we heard about the crash, our boss came into our area, our commanding officer came into the area and went, "Everybody stop what you're doing, hit save right now." He says, and then shut off all projects, except I want every documentation that we have on this project on my desk within the hour. Or he wanted the digital records, he wanted the physical records, everything that had come through, all the changes that had been requested, had been approved, everything. So from the first piece of paper that arrived from the officers to say, these are the changes we want made, all the way through to the changes, the approvals, the production of the stuff all the way through to the master manual. What does that say? Because we kept copies of the master manuals that we would make the changes on, and it was a very detailed book and everything. And so we had to get everything to him because the investigators came in and wanted to see everything that we had on this particular aircraft so that they could, so as part of their investigation, was there something wrong in the manuals that caused the plane to crash? So they were looking at everything. But anyway, so that was one of the jobs. That was, actually there were several jobs within that one. And I served at Royal New Zealand Air Force Base Wigram, which no longer exists. The only way you know it's there is the Air Force Museum is there. Everything else has been taken down. It's all housing now. And the last time I was driving around the base, what was left of it, I was almost in tears. I didn't recognize anything that was there. Oh, hang on. No, they still had a couple of buildings that I recognized, but nothing else. The building I worked in was gone. The dormitory where I lived was gone. There were houses all on the way. The only way I knew that we were in the area where my dormitory was because the gym was still there. And the gym was about a 2-minute walk from the dorms. That was a really interesting gym. We had a huge tennis court inside there because I think it was something like they had been given the direction, they had been given the measurements in feet or something and read them as meters. And there's about 3 feet to a meter. Or something like that. But we ended up with a tennis court that was literally 1.5 times of a regular court. That was after, and this was a brand new construction. I was there when it opened, and we went and like we're playing tennis inside. And I'm like, this is massive. This isn't the same as the tennis courts over. Yeah, and it turned out that all the even the basketball court, everything was like 1.5 times bigger than it needed to be with all the lines on the floor and everything. It was kind of interesting. Made for a lot of fun games and stuff in there. But anyway, I got to get going. So go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling Shake It Up Saturday. Write down your stories about what jobs you've had over the years. What was some of the roles that you had to play within like if you were in a company, what jobs did you have within that company? What was the company like to work for? What was did you enjoy it? How long were you there? So write stories about that, about your time there, because this is stuff that you can leave behind. So there is no question about your story being turned into a myth in some way or getting changed because of the rumors in the family when you have it written out. So do you want your ancestors to have your life as it is rumored that, or do you just want your actual words there so that they know exactly what happened? But go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling Shake It Up Saturday, and we'll catch you guys back here later on this evening. Hey, konera.